without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest tonight, Lauren Trantham. Lauren is a force of nature, a total inspiration. She is obviously, most importantly, a motorcycle rider, but she's also an author, a keynote speaker, and her mission in life is the anti-human trafficking nonprofit Ride My Road. So Lauren is going to tell you all about that. Be prepared to be moved, to do something to make the world a better place, because Lauren is an absolute rock star. And we're just so thrilled to have her here tonight. So ladies, drop your questions in the chat. I'm going to cancel my screen share and I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. And that's about the last you'll hear of me. So Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me. It's so fun to see some friends on here, some new people. I really appreciate you guys all being here tonight. So I'm going to share my screen and get started with my presentation. Can everybody see that all right? All right, cool. Yeah, so as mentioned, my name is Lauren, and I'm the founder and executive director of an anti-human trafficking nonprofit called Ride My Road. I'm also the director of communications at a different anti-trafficking organization called EPIC. And, this is kind of my life's work. And so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what it is that I do, some of the challenges that I've run into, and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way to help me overcome these challenges and to make an impact. So my story starts with a broken heart. Oh, raise your hand if you've ever had a broken heart. I can't see everybody, but I see some hands going up. Yeah, it's kind of a universal thing, unfortunately, that a lot of us experience. And my journey begins with leaving or the ending of an emotionally abusive marriage. So I was married for 7 years when I caught my husband in an affair, actually, and it really shocked me because I thought he was this grand person of integrity and all of these things, and he had left to be with her. And I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but it was really devastating. And I went to a counselor and I told her part of the story. And within the first hour, she told me, Lauren, your husband is actually very emotionally abusive. And I thought, no, that's not true. Like, he's never hit me. I'm educated and I'm confident and I've traveled the world and I speak 3 languages and I have all of these accolades. Like, there's no way that I've been in an abusive relationship. And she had me read some literature, and when I sat down and I read what emotional abuse is, it absolutely gutted me because I realized this is how I had been living. And so my heartbreak came from so much more than just getting a divorce or having an affair, but it was coming to terms with the fact that I was actually a victim of emotional abuse. And it really shocked me. It rocked my identity because, as I mentioned, I didn't think I couldn't reconcile that with who I thought I was. And I realized actually nobody's exempt from abuse. It is a universal thing. And so I became obsessed with that notion. And in order to try to heal, I thought, what if I can meet other people who have experienced abuse and see how they've healed? And then maybe I can learn how to heal too. And I was a professional photographer at the time. I still am. I'd been riding motorcycles for a long time. And in my desperation to sort of figure out how I was supposed to heal my heart and reestablish my identity, I came up with this idea that I could ride around the country on my motorcycle and photograph people who had experienced abuse. And like I said, maybe if they could share with me how they healed, then I could start to heal too. And so I started this journey. I partnered with an anti-human trafficking organization local to Oregon, where I live, called the Rebecca Bender Initiative, and they have an online school for American survivors of human trafficking. What was crazy was what I learned from Rebecca Bender about trafficking is that trafficking doesn't happen like we think it happens. The media and the news and Hollywood has us believing that it's just kidnapped kids and people locked in cages, and in reality, that's not what human trafficking is at all. Less than 5% of trafficking victims are kidnapped. The majority of people are trafficked through similar situations to what I experienced. It starts with emotional abuse, grooming, isolation, love bombing, and then it turns into coercion, a domestic violence situation usually, and then eventually turns into a trafficking situation. So that's what really fueled me for this journey, because I realized not only did I have to come to terms with how I had been living and that I was now realizing that I had been a victim of this, I saw that it was really by the grace of God that I wasn't trafficked, or that I didn't end up in some of these situations, because most people who are trafficked in the United States are trafficked by someone they think is their intimate partner. And so Rebecca Bender taught me all of this. We decided to partner together because she has an online school for survivors across the country. She let me tap into that network. So we sent out a big email to a bunch of survivors across the country and said, Lauren might be coming through your city, and if you'd like to take her up on the opportunity for professional headshots, just sign up. And we were overwhelmed with response. We had to end up capping it at 40. And I took my Ducati Monster, the most impractical bike to go around the country on, and I rode 10,000 miles across the United States. So I started in Oregon, and I basically went straight across up through Montana and the Upper Peninsula on over to New York City and Long Island, and then down to Florida, up through Memphis, across Texas, over to San Diego, and back up. And so on that journey, I had a lot of good times. You can see me there loaded up with my gear. Uh, I don't even know how I could fit on that thing, but I camped mostly across the country. I crashed on a couple of couches, and I just had such a beautiful journey traveling around all of these places in America, a lot of highways, and meeting survivors. Some of you guys might recognize some of your state signs. And I made it all the way back home to Oregon. And then I had the photography piece on that journey too. I met and photographed almost 40 survivors. And something to know about survivor portrait sessions is that they are a gift. So we decided when I went out on the road that we would ask for nothing in return. I would ask for nothing in return. Survivors of human trafficking are exploited commercially, and they have been used to and conditioned to receiving something so that they have to give something in return. And so part of this journey was that they did not have to sign model releases. They did not have to tell me their story. These weren't interviews. These were simply a way to celebrate their healing, and many of them shared how they healed with me. And so I'm going to show you guys some of those photos. But some of these survivors that I'm going to show are prominent leaders now in the anti-trafficking movement. When I met them, I heard them say things like, people don't realize that boys are trafficked too. I did photograph some gentlemen. And photo shoots like this can hopefully help people change to understand what trafficking survivors look like. And as you can see, they come from all genders, all races, all ethnical backgrounds. And until this photo shoot, the only photos I had of myself were from when I was in exploitation and my mugshot. I never knew my eyes sparkled like that. These were comments that I heard from survivors after their shoot. I always felt like I wore my exploitation like a sign on my forehead. Now I can see myself as beautiful. Survivors of human trafficking are a very marginalized population. Whoops, did you guys lose my screen? Sorry about that. I was trying to see you guys again. There we are. They're a very marginalized population, and so they're often left in the shadows feeling like what happened to them has never happened to anybody else, or it happened to them because it's their fault. And so again, that's what these photo shoots are here to show them, that, like being trafficked as a child meant that I never felt valued. With Lauren, I felt valued and celebrated. And so it was quite a journey that I did. This was back in 2016. On that journey, I rode 10,000 miles. I did almost 40 portrait sessions. We raised almost $60,000 for Rebecca Bender Initiative and her Elevate Academy, and I'm happy to report I got 0 speeding tickets. My mom loves that slide. So since that time, I've gone on to do close to 100 photo shoots. We've raised over $400,000. We've launched an online school called Disruptors University. We've had over 75 graduates of everyday people like you and I who don't know about trafficking can attend our online school. We've launched a conference a series across the country as well. And so really my journey is one of using my passion for a purpose. If you would have told me in the beginning that I could use my motorcycle and my camera to make a difference, I mean, I don't know that I would have believed it. And that journey was incredible. I was celebrated by the survivor community. They gave me an award at a gala. We had all kinds of media. We got invited to Sturgis. I was on the news, dozens and dozens of podcasts. I got asked to judge motorcycle builds. People wrote songs. We got on CNN. I recorded a video where I asked Keanu Reeves to be my date for a gala, and it was just really fun and silly, but the news picked it up, and then it went on national news. And so it was like just really this roller coaster of just this incredible journey. But honestly, there was a deeper truth to that journey. Like, it's fun to talk about all the accolades and all of the successes and all the funds that we raised, but I want to share with you guys the deeper truth of what was really going on with me. That's a picture of me on the road that a friend of mine took, and you can see the tears in my eyes. I was halfway through the journey. I was in Arkansas, and my photographer friend sat me down on a stool and just said to me, "How's it going?" And this was the photo that resulted. I was in an immense amount of pain, my own pain from my divorce, from healing from narcissistic abuse, also from the pain that I was absorbing, meeting these survivors and learning about one of the darkest things that can happen to a human being. When I came off the road, I had sustained some injuries, an overuse injury from riding a Ducati Monster 10,000 miles. Maybe it wasn't the best idea. The posture left me sort of immobilized in my forearms. I had to get steroid injections in both of my elbow joints. I had a bad reaction after that. It atrophied all the fat and tissue around both of my elbow joints and caused a lot of nerve damage. If you're wondering what's happening here, everybody has this. This is your elbow bone. Normally it's covered by some cushion. Mine completely atrophied on both my arms. To this day, 8 years later, it still has not returned. But I got a lot of nerve damage. After this time, I couldn't ride a motorcycle for almost 2 years. And so I want to say, like, yes, I went on the road. I did all of these great things. I helped all these people. We made the news. I asked Keanu Reeves on a date, but there was a real cost to this. And so I had that atrophy in my arms. I was 109 pounds. For reference, I'm about 130 now, for those of you who know me. I was having panic attacks, insomnia, nightmares, memory loss. I had the loss of my identity. And so on the outside, everybody was watching me do all these things and thinking like, oh, this is so life-changing and it's so amazing. And in reality, I was truly, truly struggling. And so that's what I want to talk to you guys about today is like, how do we do this? How do we kind of live these grand dreams and achieve these great things and make a big impact without compromising ourselves? Like, how do we actually overcome the challenges to make an impact? And so I want to talk to you guys about beyond that journey, some of the lessons that I had to pull on after that time to truly heal myself and to truly get to a place where you guys see me today, which is healthy and happy. And so I have three ways in which I did this. Okay, and so the first one is I'm going to tell you guys a story about a story that my dad told to me. Don't you love these photos from the 70s? This is a picture of my dad. I heard this story secondhand from him when I was about 13 years old, 13, 14 years old. He told me about this story that he had this encounter with Lee Duncan. So Lee Duncan was a family friend. All my family is like cowboys and ranchers, as you can see. And my dad went over to visit Lee Duncan in his trailer house in New Mexico. And this would have been in the 70s. And he just went to visit him in the evening time, and they were just chatting. And my dad looked out the dark window into the hillside, and there was a fire burning up in the hills. And he said, "Lee, someone's in your hills." And Lee looked out the window and said, "Oh yeah, that's my daughter Jan." Here's a photo of Jan. And my dad was like, "What is she doing out there?" She was about 15 or 16 at the time. And Lee said, "Well, Jan's afraid of coyotes. And so she went up there and she said she ain't coming home until she ain't afraid of coyotes no more." And my dad said, "How long has she been up there?" And he said, "3 days." And when I was 13 years old and my dad told me the story about Jan going up into the mountains and camping by herself because she was so afraid of coyotes, she wanted to get over that fear. And it really hit me that fear exists for all of us, but we can choose to sit with it until we can overcome it. And so I'd like you guys to take a moment to think about, what are your coyotes? Is it failure? Going to the doctor? Your own mortality? Letting your kids go off to college? Starting a new business? Losing somebody that you love? Public speaking, maybe? Deep water. I'm afraid of deep water. Sharks. Judgment of others. Not realizing your potential. Being alone. Going to therapy. Being still. I think this is a big one for a lot of us, especially us adventure-driven women. Sometimes we do a lot of things, a lot of really fun things, because it's just hard to be still sometimes. I think your coyotes can also be reaching for those things that you know are not good for you, whether it's substances or your cell phone or your social media. So I'd like you guys to just think about, what are some of your coyotes. And then I invite you to go camping with them. I'd invite you to really take a deep dive with them. So in that step of identifying your coyotes, sitting with them, taking time, and get right with yourself. I mean, if we think about Jan sitting up there for 3 days with nothing between her and the howling coyotes, but a campfire, and that she stayed up there as long as it took until she came down. She wasn't afraid of coyotes anymore. We all have that capability. We all have that power. So camp with your coyotes until you ain't afraid of coyotes no more, in the spirit of Jan Duncan. So the next step to overcoming a challenge and making an impact is to be coachable. And I love this one. I grew up playing sports, and so I understood always the premise of what it means to be coachable. You understand when you're in the ring fighting, or when you're on the soccer field playing, that your coach sees things that you don't see, and that's why you need a coach. So I think for a lot of us, for example, many of us have come to SheADV and various events that SheADV hosts because we know we need coaching. We know we need to get better. And so sometimes that's easy. It's an easy thing to do, right? You say, "Oh, I want to be able to learn how to ride my motorcycle in these ruts. I know where I can go to get coaching." But I want to invite you guys to cultivate a level of vulnerability outside the ring, or off of your motorcycle. And so in order to do that, you have to have two things, and that's humility and courage. Humility to know that we don't know everything, and to accept that that's okay. Having the courage to be able to ask for guidance and to display some vulnerability. And I know this is a gendered remark, but I do think women are better at this. I think this is some of our strong suit, and so I do feel a little bit like I might be preaching to the choir, but I'd like to invite you guys to consider where else can we get coaching in life beyond just our sports. So I always use the example of Jocelyn Snow, because you guys all know and love Jocelyn. She's a SheADV ambassador, and she's the 5'1" woman who has taken on the world of adventure motorcycling, made it to the GS trophy, and when I first met her, I was so astounded because I'm actually just 1 inch taller than her. And I will let you guys know the reason that I rode a Ducati Monster across the country instead of something maybe a little more practical is because I was afraid of tall bikes. I had said to myself that I can't ride tall bikes. I'm only 5'2". And then I met Jocelyn and I saw her riding a bike at 5'1", and she inspired me. And so that's why I've upgraded now to my desert sled, which is pretty tall. And through the help of Ina and dirt bike safety training and some of you guys at like Tour Tech and stuff, you guys have helped me to learn the skills to be able to not die on this bike. And I took that bike after Jocelyn inspired me and helped me to get motivated. I took that bike on my next round trip to photograph survivors through the Pacific Northwest, and then I had them start to sign the front fender. So, but I do want you guys to think about like who are you discounting? Because as I mentioned before, preaching to the choir, you guys are coachable specifically when it comes to learning how to ride our motorcycles better. But where in our lives can we be coachable in other areas? So maybe in our marriages, I always joke that there's a coach for this. They're called therapists. Business coach, is it time for you to hire a business coach and be business and be coachable? Maybe you need a little support parenting with your health, hiring that fitness trainer finally you've been thinking about, relationships, finances, mental health, finding your purpose. Do you guys need some support finding your purpose? Maybe what motorcycle to buy, right? So it's important to remember that, like I mentioned before, coaches help you see what you can't see. They're looking at the ring, you're inside the ring, they're looking at it from the outside, and they're seeing things about your opponents that you can't see. And they also believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. And so in order to be coachable and to cultivate that more, ask who are you discounting in your life? Who do you think you could start to learn some things? Have that humility to say, hey, I don't know everything, and start asking for help. Consider ways to be vulnerable outside of your comfort zone. And remember that coaches believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. Last time I was at Tour Tech, I did a ride. I did the She ADV ride, which was so fun. There was so many women on that ride. And I first went to Ina and I said, Ina, she's a coach of mine. Do you think I can do this? Because I wasn't sure that I could do this ride that you guys had. And when she told me, yeah, you can do it, then I believed I could do it. But I needed that. I needed Ina there to help me with that. So remember that coaches believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. So be humble, be courageous, and be coachable. The last thing on the beyond the journey for overcoming a challenge and making an impact is to build community, and that's exactly what you guys are doing here. So no worries there. But I want to say this quote from Margaret Wheatley: "There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about." And so I love that about, what I love about this quote is that it does take us all coming together and determining what it is that's important to us. Like when you set the culture and like when we come to a She ADV event, for example, and the culture is welcoming and inclusive and supportive, like that's not by accident. That's because you guys have all come together and really implemented what you care about. And so I want to talk about one of the key ingredients to building community, and what we're already doing here is generosity. So I'll tell you a story about a survivor that I photographed. This is Morgan. We did an event in St. Augustine, Florida once, and we invited her to come and speak as a survivor to this fundraising event that we were doing. And she stood up there and she talked about how when you give, it's an act of love. So when you give, for example, we're raising funds for survivors. When you give to Ride My Road, or when you give to organizations that support survivors, you're giving to a person you'll never meet. You might not know the impact that you'll have on somebody's life. And so that's what's so beautiful about generosity is it's an act of love. It's an act of love that doesn't even necessarily have to be reciprocated from the person you're giving it to. And I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment, that when you support charities or when you support community endeavors, you're committing an act of love because you're helping somebody that you'll never meet. And acts of love, aka generosity, is what strengthens the community. And so that's why I'm going to ask you guys to support SheADV with your acts of love. And remember that this is a nonprofit organization, and it's no different than donating to any other nonprofit organization that supports women. I mean, that's what's being done here, elevating women voices, showing up and being supportive together. And so I want to remind you guys or invite you guys to take Eva up on her invitation to donate, to visit the PayPal account. Let's see how many people are on the call right now. This Zoom thing is always in my way. It's not letting me see. But if everybody could give, I think there was maybe around 40. Let's just say if everybody on this call gave $40, I'm sorry, $20, we could raise $800 tonight for SheADV. And if you make that a recurring donation, that could be a game changer for this organization. And I just want to remind you guys about that being an act of love. When you give your money to people who are changing the world, it's an act of love, and that will come back to you in full fold. And so my challenge to you guys is to go camping with your coyotes, and I truly mean that, to be still, to take time to consider your fears, to start to overcome those fears by being coachable, by meeting your mentors, meeting people who can help you, consider people that maybe you discounted earlier, and build community with acts of love. And so that's my presentation today. For us, for Ride My Road, for the work that we do for survivors right now, our biggest ask is just that you join our emailer. You can learn more ways to support survivors. You can hear about our private podcast and whatnot. But and I can drop the link for this in the chat too if you don't catch the QR code right now. And then this is how you can reach me, ridemyroad.org. All of my socials are Ride My Road. And yeah, I'm just really, really grateful to organizations that SheADV that are bringing women together. I want to tell you guys that human trafficking is driven by a lack of community. So we have two parts to it. We have the supply and we have the demand. And when we look at people who are swept up in vulnerable situations where their vulnerabilities are exploited, it's because they don't have a community of people around them looking out. Same goes with the men who drive this horrific crime. This is a crime that's driven by demand. There's a market out there. Men who purchase sex and participate financially in the human trafficking black market also lack community. And so what you guys are doing here together, I always like to say, like, the more time you're spending in community, the more you're preventing trafficking. And so I want to commend you guys for having hobbies, for showing up, for supporting each other, for being together, because all of that matters. It matters in the fabric of our country, and it matters to the lives of survivors and vulnerable populations. So thank you so much.
Lauren, that was so good. It's so good. It's so powerful. I'm low-key like choked up from the whole thing. I'm just going to try and hold it together. I was wondering, since we have a few more minutes on the call, can we ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
So ladies, please drop your questions in the chat. I don't know if I said that before Lauren launched in, but I know I personally have a couple questions. One of the things that really piqued my interest was your Disruptors University, because I feel like these learning opportunities are so cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I have Disruptors University, which I actually launched during COVID because we Ride My Road was historically an event fundraising motorcycle rally type organization, and when COVID hit, I canceled 18 events that year. And I was concerned, like, how are we going to pivot? How are we going to get the word out about human trafficking and Zoom? So I launched Disruptors University around that time to give community members the opportunity to come and learn. So it's anywhere from 8 to 12-week cohorts. It's just an hour and a half a week. They're free to attend. We do like people to fundraise if they come and attend, but we bring in survivor leaders from across the movement to educate on different facets of the of the issue. And I didn't really touch on trafficking much here, but like I did mention, it doesn't happen the way that we think it happens. And if we're not educated on it, we can't combat it. And so I have the university online. I'll have another semester launching, another cohort launching next year. And from that sprung out our Disruptor Summits. So we're doing conference series as well. I've hosted, co-hosted conferences in Alaska and Southern Oregon. If you guys are anywhere in California, Washington, Idaho, well, anywhere, everybody's invited. Our next summit is May 2025 in Southern Oregon.
Love that. That's awesome. Ladies, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. But if anybody has a question right now, feel free to come off of mute or raise your little hand and we can call on you. Is anybody particularly moved by Lauren's presentation tonight? Or am I just going to keep asking questions? Oh, okay. We've got one in the chat. Let's see. Deirdre says, were you aware of how negatively the ride was affecting your body while on the road? How did you handle that during the trip, or did you defer all of the care until afterwards?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean, it took me years to admit, this was 8 years ago. It took me many, many years to be able to admit out loud how hard that trip was. For many years, I just was like, the trip was great and it was so amazing. And it did take an enormous toll on my body, and you can see it through the photos of the journey. And my arm pain started in Montana, and it just got worse and worse and worse. The weight loss was like very apparent. I just could not eat enough calories just to be able to ride like that. And I was riding big days, 400 miles, 500 miles, 600 miles. I'd do 10 photo shoots and then I'd go to the next state. And it was just like 8 weeks of nonstop. And then we did 7 major events. So yeah, basically I'm saying don't do what I did. Yeah, and then it took me many, many years to recover.
Did you feel like that journey was somehow cathartic for you? Do you feel like you were engaged in the healing process, or do you feel like you needed to do something outside of yourself for your own healing and then could come back to yourself later?
Yeah, well, to be transparent, I really thought I'm going to go on the road and I'm going to heal my heart. Like, I'm going to heal my broken heart through helping others. That was like the whole premise. And I just didn't realize about, first of all, vicarious trauma. I was very unhealed myself. That whole like divorce thing happened in November, and I was on the road the following September. So I had my own trauma that I was going through, and I was just not trauma informed. I didn't understand about vicarious trauma. And so, yeah, it was just, ultimately, I did heal through what I learned from survivors. And I actually wrote a book. I'm meeting with the publisher tomorrow. It should come out in the fall of next year, kind of detailing all of that. But I was so loved by the survivor community, and they just poured into me so much. It was really, really incredible. And so I know I'm saying like, oh, I was a wreck. It was so hard, but there was so many beautiful things as well.
I love that. Awesome. Couple more questions in the chat. Helena, how were you able to financially support your trip?
So I self-funded the trip, so that every dollar that we raised went straight to the Rebecca Bender initiative. And so I had a little bit of savings, and then I had, my biggest expense was gas because I was camping, and I did crash on a lot of couches and a lot of floors, and it was like friends of friends. Like, I was meeting people I'd never met before. I mean, it was incredible. And so all in all, I had some expenses just from my bike breaking down, needing new tires halfway around the journey. Yeah, I just self-funded it, and it wasn't like incredibly expensive. I just tried to, be meager.
I love that. Do you have any other trips planned in the not too distant future? Are you cooking on anything? Are you deep in book?
Yeah, I'm deep in work right now. It is a little bit tough on my health to go on the road. I've gone on the road 3 times now since that big trip, and each time I come home like just a little bit more, like, oh, that was rough. I think I'm more considerate instead of just pushing, pushing, pushing. And so I don't have any trips planned right now. in 2025. I'm also, so I have the two nonprofits, and I'm also going to grad school for social justice and human rights to work with some of the data that we're collecting on the buyer portion of human trafficking. So no trips planned right now.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll see you at Tour Attack.
Yes, I do. I do love to do the rally circuit.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's see. Sue Watson was wondering how many days did it take you to ride those 10,000 miles?
The whole journey was like almost 8 weeks to the day. So I did have a couple of periods where I would take 4 or 5 days off. I took 4 or 5 days off in New York. I stayed in Florida for a little while, New Mexico. But mainly it was because we had events, and I was trying to let those events fall on the weekends, the fundraising events that we did. And I mean, 10,000 miles is a lot, but the 40 photo shoots was really because those, it took like a lot of time. So,
Mhm. Yeah, so it's like ride, work, keep riding, work, try and get some sleep, go, miles, miles, miles. There's
yeah,
something about
yeah,
motorcycle travel, I think, that always pushes us to keep moving. And there's this extra challenge. Like, on one hand, I feel like the momentum of motorcycle travel is so powerful and it can support us because, by the very nature of bikes, they have to keep moving, right? Otherwise, they fall over. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because you just kind of get in this rhythm where you just keep on the throttle and just keep going. It's hard to sometimes slow down.
yeah.
And I think that's interesting too, because one of your wise teachings is to just be still, right? Like, right, find your coyotes and then just be still with them. Just sit with
I mean,
them.
it's not a mistake. Like I did this trip to run away from my life. And so that's why I'm saying sometimes when we've got things going on with us in our relationships or our lives or whatever it may be, we're inclined to just go, 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 go. And I'm not saying don't do that. There's a time for everything. I don't regret doing the trip, obviously. But just to be cognizant of those rhythms of go,
Right.
go, 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 go. That hustle culture, I think, it certainly made me sick. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And being still has been such a gift, and it's very hard fought. I mean, it's like I wake up in the middle of the night and you're just so upset. It's like I just reach for my phone and scroll. It's like it just keeps you in that cycle of unhealed, unhealing. And so being still is one of the hard, it's like one of the biggest coyotes I think that a lot of us can face is to just sit.
Yeah. That one hit me. I definitely hit me. Let's see. Olivia from our team in the chat says, what was your favorite part of the press tour afterwards?
Uh, I mean, to me, because it's my life's purpose now, it really is educating people on human trafficking. Like just telling people, like, yeah, it's less than 5% of people that are kidnapped. And seeing people's eyes light up and be like, whoa, I had no idea. And actually, there's more dangers on this. I mean, infinitely more dangers to children, to all of our children on their cell phones than there is from like the white van. And so, like, educating parents, educating communities to like, hey, we really want to keep people safe. Like, this is how we do it. That's just been, I mean, I did that trip thinking it was going to be a one-time photography project. And here I am almost 9 years later. And it's that passion for spreading that awareness and keeping people safe that's been my favorite part.
Love it. Um, Also from our team, Erin asks, if you had to do it again, what would you do differently?
Probably not marry a narcissist, honestly. No, I don't think I would change a thing. I'm so full of gratitude. I'm so blessed in my life. I can't believe where this journey has taken me, and I do think about it all the time. As cliche as it sounds, I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, even the
Yeah.
monster, and I do think like I chose that bike. That was the bike I've been riding anyways. That was my bike. The posture did mess me up. I still have nerve damage in my shoulders and whatnot. But I don't think I would change any of it. Yeah, that's my final answer.
Final answer. It is, yeah. It always takes a while. Like when you're in the thick of something really intense or really hard or really challenging, it's always hard to think, well, like, oh, this means something, or it's taking me somewhere that I need to be, or it's a lesson that I need to learn somehow. Because when you're in the thick of the suck, then like it's hard to wrap your head around that lesson. But it's so nice
Yeah,
that afterwards you can look back on that and be like, okay, that is my
yeah.
path. That's so
Well,
cool.
yeah, what I had to do is, I know you guys know the expression, everything happens for a reason. And I do think that's something that I understand it. I think I used to believe it until I met survivors of human trafficking, and you're kind of like, no, there's no reason this should happen. But instead of saying everything happens for a reason, I think it's important to say, what is the meaning I'm going to make out of this?
Hmm.
And so that's ultimately what I had to do. I was in so much pain, and I said, all this pain cannot be for nothing. And I created this whole thing, this whole nonprofit out of that. Like, I'm going to make this broken heart mean something if it's the last thing I do. And we all have that power. We have that power to make our own meaning.
I love that. All right, couple more questions. So, um, Deirdre in the chat said that she was impressed by how little you packed for the 8 weeks of camping, even though you said you were crammed onto your little monster. Do you have any tips and tricks for packing? Any thoughts
Yeah.
about when you're carrying your life with you?
Yeah, that one picture that I showed you guys, that was in Seattle. By the time I made it to Ohio, I had sent home a big box of half of that crap that I didn't need. Luckily, I only shoot one Nikon bodied camera with fixed lens. I didn't take any camera gear other than that, which is part of part of keeping it simple for survivors, honestly. It's not meant to be a big production. That can be very overwhelming. Many survivors were trafficked in pornography and they had to have their photos taken. And so keeping it as simple as can be is best. And so that really worked to my benefit on my bike. But yeah, I use giant loop gear. I use giant loop luggage system, and just try to keep it light. Just shove everything in. And like I said, once you do it a time or two, you start to realize what you don't need. And so it's just practice.
Totally. And you can always send it home
Oh,
or
that's what I did.
drop it off at the Goodwill or
Yep.
whatever. I love it. Okay, just a quick note on training. So apparently you take a training class like every year over and over and over again. You keep coming back to motorcycle training. Why do you do that?
Uh, Honestly, I can say it's because I watched you ladies like just be such bosses on your bikes, and I want to do that too. Like it really is, and I want to just commend you guys for going forth in front and just inviting us, the rest of us, along that are still learning like how to ride adventure bikes, and just know the impact that you guys have. Like when you do amazing things, other people are watching, and that's certainly the case with me. And so, yeah, if I want to, ride next to Ina and ride next to Jocelyn and ride next to y'all, like I better go get some training. And so I really value training, and I talk about being coachable, and it's actually fundamental to who I am. I try to do some kind of a training beyond motorcycles, just like coaching or whatever it is once a year. Go learn something, get away, go to a camp for 5 days, like get out of your comfort zone and go learn something.
Love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's hard. It's hard, right? Because we get so caught up in our day-to-day
Hmm.
rigmarole of life. It's so hard to peel away and take that time because coaching is a
Hmm.
luxury to be coached, to have a good therapist, to have a mentor, to peel off and take a
Hmm.
training. I mean, all that. It's part of that self-care regimen.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more questions popping in here. What is the definition of human trafficking?
Yeah, human trafficking, the federal definition, the universally accepted definition is exploitation, commercial exploitation through the means of force, fraud, or coercion. And so, like if a prosecutor wants to build a case, he has to demonstrate that there was force, fraud, or coercion. And so force can be like kidnapping. I don't mean to say it doesn't happen, it does happen. It's just not the most prolific way that it happens. But force like kidnapping, drugging, Fraud is like, hey, I have a great job opportunity for you. Why don't you come on over? And then the person gets over there and realizes that it's actually not a great job opportunity, that it's a trafficking situation. So the person has been defrauded. Fraud also exists in pimp controlled trafficking, like I said, where a pimp comes in and pretends to be a romantic partner. All along, he's grooming the victim to turn them out, to turn them into prostitution. That's also fraud. That person has been defrauded. And then coercion is the next one, and it's like it can look like do this, or I'm going to make your little sister do this. Right. So I'm sorry, I didn't give like a trigger warning, but these are the stories that I'm hearing from survivors. And so force, fraud, and coercion for a commercial, an exchange of something of value.
Mhm, mhm. Um, gosh, it's just, it, yeah. I have no response. It's just heavy stuff. Like the fact
Yeah.
that it happens, and it just reminds me how important it is that we're all here together, and that we all have this shared passion, and that we've got groups like SheADV, and hopefully that we have friends and networks and support systems back home, because I mean, you said it to us
Yeah.
already. Like that's the thing that helps us steer clear of that and helps
Yeah. I
combat
mean,
any of that
it
stuff.
is community is trafficking prevention. And
Hmm.
I don't, I want to keep emphasizing that because I'm still like commending you guys for being part of community. Like it's incredible. It's really making an impact.
So important, especially in this day and age when we're all just so spread apart and torn apart and busy and run ragged, and like social media is everything, and work, 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 work. So it's so important that we can come together like this. Okay, couple more questions popping up. Maybe a couple more action steps. So, any advice for finding coaches, motorcycle or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, like if you need a motorcycle coach, you're already in the right place. Like just start asking around. I know
Yeah.
you guys have coaches and ambassadors all across the country. But yeah, sometimes it's just a Google search, like see who's local, see what's going on in your community, ask your friends. Other coaches like business coaches and I do pay for a lot of coaching. Like the last 2 years, I've paid for a book writing coach. I'm part of a program to help me get my book launched. So I've spent a lot of time and money in this program for writing this book, and I've paid them. But I also think there's a lot of unpaid options available for finding a mentor. People want to share what they know. And so if you see somebody in your community that's like just absolutely crushing it, just invite them to coffee and be really transparent. Hey, I'm really inspired by what you're doing. I'd love to know like a little bit more about how you do it. People love to go and sit down and for coffee and to talk about themselves. Like it's just like a win-win. Like people will pour into you and then later you can pour into somebody else. And so just look around at people who are inspiring you and like don't be afraid to ask them. Like what's the worst they can say? Like no, I'm too busy. Like, oh, okay. Maybe next time when you're not so busy.
Yeah.
Just keep dropping in their inbox and be bold. That's kind of like with your coyotes too. Like if you're afraid to approach people that inspire you, like that's something to practice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's awesome. Well, Lauren, you have been such an inspiration. I would love to invite you to coffee next time so I can keep picking your brain about this stuff. And if you say no, I'll just ask you the next time when you're not so busy. It's just been so awesome. I have a feeling that everyone here is walking away with a little gift directly from you, because this has been such a wonderful treasure of an evening. So many good, thought-provoking things, tugging at the heartstrings. And, at the end of the day, it's the story of empowerment. And like, just really, I love hearing the way you've come full circle and taken that struggle and turned it into something amazing. So thank you so much for sharing. Of course, on the coaching side of things for SheADV, we are getting ready to release a whole shebang, a whole list of the women trainers here in the US for the most part. We haven't tapped any women trainers from out of the country, but just a whole comprehensive list of SheADV trainers. So if you're looking for motorcycle coaching coming into the new year, we're going to have that available. Ridemyroad.org, so much good information on there. Training programs, portraits, so much good stuff. Lauren, thank you so much for your support of SheADV. Ladies, thank you all so much for your support of SheADV. We'll be back next month in December. We're just going to do a little winterizing your bikes, do a little end of year wrap up, have a little social, meet each other, continue fostering that community. We can all wear the jerseys that we're all buying from the jersey form for the last of the year, because we should all have those in our mailboxes by the time this next round comes. But appreciate all of you. Lauren, thank you so much. Thanks to the whole SheADV community, and have a wonderful evening, ladies. We'll see you next month.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
I appreciate the nice comments and I'm reading in the chat, but I am going to pledge $10 a month to SheADV. I'm going to get off this call and I'm going to go over to the PayPal and I'm going to become a recurring donor and I want to see who's with me. $10. We got some takers. All right, that's so exciting. All right, I'll see you guys in the PayPal then. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you. Ladies, have a wonderful night. We'll see you next month, if not sooner.